One crucial component to making a good game is game feel. Beyond designing a fun game, for it to actually be fun, the game needs to feel good to play. If you design a shooter but the shooting feels janky, it's not going to be a good time. The execution in building certain mechanics can make or break your game. Player movement is a big one that can feel really good or really terrible depending on how you implement it. So I've been doing a lot of fine-tuning lately to make the movement in my game feel good. If you don't know me, my name is Jacob Leonardo. I have a degree in game development, and I'm working on this game called Chroma Crusade, where you can build ships and command a fleet. The core component of the game is the space battle, so I want it to feel very dynamic and fun. So since this game is in space, I thought it makes sense to go by space rules where everything in motion stays in motion. There's no air drag or anything. If I hold W here, I'll just kind of keep floating off in this direction. And this will be important because your ships will use energy. So whenever you're using your thrusters, it'll deplete some of your energy. So it's good. Like you don't need to hold W and keep using your thrusters to keep going in this direction. But beyond this, you can move. Oh my goodness, bro. Can you chill? In this game, you're going to have both hands on your keyboard. So you're going to be using WASD and then IJKL. So no mouse is going to be required. You're going to steer and use your thrusters and everything on the keyboard. Firstly, there's you have your basic 8-directional WASD movement where I can move forwards, I can reverse, and then I can go left and right. And then you can use J and L to turn your ship. So I can turn like this. And then it's sort of the same thing with it being velocity based, so I can tap to go in this direction just to turn a little bit, or I can hold the key to accelerate more. And then K is your brake key. So if I'm going this direction, say I'm like going off this way and I'm like spinning out, if I hold K, it'll slow everything back down to a stop. Because it's kind of hard to do that without a brake key, because like you're always gonna be like floating off a little bit in some direction, no matter how like perfect you try to get with it. So it's really good to have this brake key. And then I is your like turbo booster. So if I'm going off in this direction, I can only get up to about this velocity, but you can increase your max velocity as well as your acceleration by holding I. So I'll speed up even more. You can only really tell by the stars in the background because I haven't worked with Cinemachine yet to get the like camera follow working. So it's sort of just based on the stars in the background. But yeah, so I'll accelerate a lot faster with this boost key as well. So I can pick up speed a lot faster, and then that will obviously deplete a lot more energy than just using your thrusters normally. So the main thing with this system, beyond it just being like velocity based, is the fact that you can sort of redirect your momentum with your turns. So if I'm flying off this way, if I hold my W key and I go into a turn, I'll start to curve around like this. So I can do like these sort of figure 8 motions. And then same thing if I'm strafing. So if I'm strafing to the side here and then I start to turn this way, I can start to curve around. And so with this, you can sort of spin in a circle while facing outwards or facing inwards, depending on what direction you're turning and what strafe key you're holding. Yeah, so I like this system a lot. I think it's very dynamic because you can control exactly how fast you want to move. Because if I just tap these keys a little bit, I can move in this direction very slowly. But if I hold the keys, I can accelerate more. So this lets you sort of control like what angle you're turning at. So if I want to turn at a very wide angle, I can just press L a little bit and I'll turn at this pretty wide angle. And then if I press it a little more, it'll be a little bit of a tighter turn and so on. So you can really there's a lot of dynamics with where you're moving. And I think this gives it like a high skill ceiling. I think it'll be pretty hard to get the AI to use this movement because there's a lot of like dynamics to it. So that'll be an interesting process because the AI is going to move the same way the player does. Yeah, so you can also sort of choose if you want to be like redirecting your movement. So since you don't have to like hold the key to keep going in a certain direction, if I was moving forward here and I wanted to look in a direction without actually like turning in that direction, I can do that just by like using the turn keys without pressing any of the thrust keys. It's only while I'm holding the thrust keys and I'm turning that it'll start to like redirect my movement. I've had a lot of fun just flying around, honestly, on my own, like with nothing to even do or fight, which I think speaks to it being like a good movement system. Like I've made a lot of movement systems in the past. That usually ends up being my job if I'm working on a project with other people, but I'm really happy with how this turned out. I made a version of this movement in the past for a class project. The version of this where I first built the fleet mechanics where you can do the different fleet formations. This is a much more like refined version of it because the last one didn't take into account as much the like left and right Redirecting, I guess. It's hard to explain, but it was very like it was a lot more snappy and less smooth the way it should be. But I think this is in a good place, and the next steps now are going to be sort of linking it up to the ship building stuff because there's a lot of stats that go into it. I have the save system working with the ship builder. So when you save one of your builds, it'll save the statistics for your game ship. So like there's a version of there's a version of the ship build that like saves where all the pieces need to go so that it can load it back into the editor. But there's all can you not chew on that? Why are you chewing on that? Can you not do that, please? Can you stop chewing on my microphone? Look at this, bro. You're a freak. Just can you just chill out? Anyways, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. Thanks, dude. Oh yeah, the shipbuilder stuff. So there's a version where it saves where all the parts are, so it can load it back into the editor. But there's another version of the save that is like, okay, how much mobility does the ship have based on how many wings it has, and how much mobility each wing gives, and how much mass does the ship have based on the combined mass of all of the parts. So I have the save for that working. It's just a matter of implementing it with this because this ship I'm flying around right now actually only has one mass, and it just has a lot of like random variables for a lot of this stuff, like the max velocity and angular velocity and the mobility and the handling. These are all like not proportional values to what I want them to be for the like part stats. So there's that sort of bridging the gap there to make it work together, and then I can start showing off like how different ships will fly based on the build. So like a big mothership won't be able to accelerate that quickly. Since it will have so much more mass, it'll be a lot harder to move around and steer. You won't be able to do these like really tight turns like you can do on this ship. But I sort of just made like a generic like fighter ship that can maneuver pretty quickly. What are you doing now? But I wanted to get into a bit of how the code actually works for this because on its own, just rotating the ship and adding force in the direction you're pressing is not enough to get this sort of movement. These tight turns require like a redirection of your existing velocity, not just adding new forces in the new directions. Without using the redirection stuff, when you try to like change direction, like say I'm flying this way and I try to steer to the left, you see how it doesn't really take me anywhere. It's sort of just like it like is like fighting my existing velocity. I didn't want it to like fight the speed you already have. I want it to like sort of use it. So you can see how I just kind of drift and it's sort of like I don't know, it's very dull. You can't really do any interesting maneuvers with this. You sort of just have to like brake to start going in a different direction any faster. Um it's yeah, no, this is not it at all. Yeah, so basically the way this works is using all of this. So this is my whole thrust method here. And so if you just ignore all of this, it would come down to it takes in a direction based on what key you're pressing, and then it applies force in that direction combined with like how much mobility you have, which is like your speed basically. Um, and then all the interesting stuff, all the redirection stuff is this big block here, which basically goes off of firstly like figuring out what side of the ship is trying to face forward. So like if you're holding W, it's like the front of your ship that is trying to go in that direction. It's either your transform.right or your transform.up, which is like your forward in this 2D space. And then we're finding basically the misalignment of your ship. So if you want to move in this direction, but you're currently moving in this direction, this is how much misalignment you have. Like how far away is your ship rotated from where you want to be? And so that's where the dot product of this comes in to find how misaligned you are. And then combined with your misalignment, we basically just use your normalized velocity and angular velocity, and then I have them running through these curves to make it feel smoother. But when you combine all this with a magical redirect value, that's when you get the sort of movement I have for this. So it's basically just adding additional force on top of what you already have. So it sort of is helping you fight the existing velocity you have, but it doesn't feel that way. Since it's using your existing velocity to redirect you, it sort of feels more like you're just like steering your velocity in a new direction. Yeah, so you can see if I'm not going very fast, it'll sort of just spin out if I try to like turn too fast. There's not much like velocity to help me redirect. It's only when I'm going faster that I can really like catch like a curve or like actually like redirect anything. But yeah, I hope this seems fun to you. Movement is like one of my favorite things in games, so I really wanted to try to make this feel good. So yeah, soon you'll get to see some more of the pieces come together, like the building aspect of it with this movement aspect of it. Um, And then from there, I can start expanding and get into the combat. The weapon system is going to be a big thing because I mean this ship has 2 guns on it, but they can't shoot yet. So still a lot to go. We're still in the very early stages of this. Thanks for watching. Bye. Bye.